Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start with the story in which our OP was a decent person, but no one appreciated him. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. I have to get permission to shovel? Okay. I live in the upper Midwest in a crappy apartment complex with a psychotic property manager. I mean psychotic in that she'll answer the door for me while cocking her handgun. Okay, whatever. When I moved in, I informed the manager that I'd be willing to do snow removal for free as I have the equipment and enjoy doing it. Something oddly satisfying, I guess. She told me not to do it for free. Why not get paid for it? All right, I can always use some extra money. The first couple snowstorms of the season, I was out as soon as I was off work clearing the snow. It was requested that I get additional details on the property and that I would be paid a certain amount. No problem. But I'm then told that I have to get permission ahead of time and they only want it done once a week max. I'll play ball, I guess. It took me almost a month to get paid, and in that time span we got several more snowstorms. Nothing to write home about, but enough so that walking became a bit treacherous. Still haven't gotten paid? Guess what? No snow's getting removed. Snow got packed down so badly that one had to physically step down from the snowpack instead of continuing on level footing. I'm then told that the property manager has gotten someone else to do the snow removal, and my services are no longer required. Today, we get a nice little ice storm, making everything extra slick. Guess what? Still hasn't been cleared out. Good luck using a snowblower on hard-packed snow and ice effer. I hope you have good insurance for when somebody wipes out because you wouldn't pay me to keep things clean. And our second story. Only cut down part of the tree. Years ago, we lived in a house on a large plot, house built up on the front third, leaving a massive rear garden, and in there at the bottom was a very large avocado pear tree. Large tree, a good number of years old, and bore some pretty large pears every year. However, it had a split trunk. And also was tall, around 15 meters high, taller than the telephone cabling that ran along the bottom of the property, which also ran through this tree to the house. Dad liked the avocado pears, though. Because of the height of the tree, they only grew at the top, so he made a 6-meter-long pole with a net, the swimming pool net with a broken net attached in order to attempt to get at least a few undamaged. But this only got the lower third of the tree, and the top fruit would fall down in the wind, shattering on the ground. They also fell on the neighbor's property, and his roof had received a few holes from these missiles landing on it. But the neighbor and my father were firm friends, so would fix the holes together. But we're getting fed up of this tree. So one day they both confronted my mother and insisted they trim the tree, and she eventually agreed. She insisted that they only cut down half the tree, and they both agreed to this. So Saturday comes, Dad has rented a chainsaw. They have a nice sharp blade, a lot of strong rope, and the telco tech here to repair the phone line, again, when the tree snaps it. The neighbor and my dad talk about this job, and as my mother's out shopping, they come to the conclusion, along with the telco tech, that the best solution is to obey and cut half the tree down. Unanimously, they come to the conclusion the best half is the bottom half, and I'm sent up the tree, lightest person, and we had the telco ladder to get me up 6 meters to where the trunk was still thick enough to be useful, as avocado wood is not the strongest wood, and even very thick branches will break easily. So rope attached, chainsaw at the ready, and we all pull on the rope at a long distance while the trunk has a notch cut. And the rear cut through to the timber moment. Fell roughly where we wanted it, just flattened a few banana stems that were in the way, but those would regrow anyway pretty fast. Telco tech sets ladder again, and I attach rope again, and again tree falls in the right direction. This time taking the phone line with it. Telco tech splices in a new section and goes up the pole to connect to the pole again and leaves. Then we got the task of moving the chunks as they were cut, making a few piles of leaves and twigs for burial in the ground, and a few piles of wood that was left to dry as firewood. Dad and the neighbor cracked open some beers to celebrate the occasion as they finished up. Then Mom came home and walked through to the back. She came down shouting at what they'd done. She'd agreed to only half the tree, and they'd cut it off at knee height. As the neighbor and Dad replied with big grins, they had indeed only taken down half the tree and had decided that the bottom half was the best part to remove, as it was the easiest. Not their fault the top didn't stay up there. Banana shrubs grew back fast, and we simply got avocado pears from the neighbor, as he had a few small trees you could pick from easily. And we gave bananas from the harvest we had. His roof stayed intact, no more half-kilo missiles punching through the asbestos sheeting. And our next story. Lady purposely hit my truck because she didn't like where I parked, so I got my revenge. I was visiting my cousin who lives on a street that has no garages and very few driveways, so everyone parks on the street. This makes for a lot of people having to find parking where they can and walk to their house since the parking is scarce. I park across the street from his house at the first open space. There's no reserved parking, handicap signs, or anything. It's just street parking. When I come out to leave, a car's parked in front of me, but it actually hit my truck and is still sitting there touching it. It didn't do a ton of damage, but it did dent my bumper and my grill. I assume the driver just didn't realize what they did. It's not a big enough deal to call the cops, and I don't know what house they're attached to since few people end up lucky enough to park in front of their own house. I'm basically going to forget about it unless I see the car's owner. I snapped some pics and wrote down the license plate. Just then, another neighbor comes out and tells me he watched the car park and that the driver was mad someone had parked in front of her house, and she had her passenger get out and direct her to back up enough to just barely hit my truck to teach me a lesson about parking in front of her house. The neighbor tells me about how he's done this before to other people's cars, how everyone on the street hates her, how he's caught her red-handed putting her extra garbage bags next to his trash can on garbage day because she thought he'd already gone to work. Those extra bags cost extra to haul. She's taken people's cats and dogs to the animal shelter and instructed them to be put down, dumped dog poop on the cars of people she thinks own the dogs, etc. Just a real witch of a woman. So I'm PO'd now, and rather than confront her and need to get the police involved, I just decide to get revenge. First, I took a diabetic syringe and shot some super glue into all the house's exterior door locks. Then me and my cousin had drinks on his front porch while we waited for her to get home. When she got there, I saw a spinster, grouchy-faced lady in her late 40s, early 50s. She gave us a glare for no reason as she got out of her car. She, of course, couldn't get her key to work, and we watched her try to get in her house for an hour before a locksmith showed up. He couldn't figure it out either. She ended up getting a contractor to come out and break in, then replace all the locks. She never had a clue why it stopped working. I wasn't finished yet, though. The next day, I went there with a can of pepper spray and sprayed her front door handle with it. Pepper spray leaves behind a slightly oily residue. People touch their face way more than they realize. So again, waited on the porch with cousin to see her come home. 15 minutes after she got home, she comes running outside, holding her face and screaming. She tries to get in her car but can't see to drive. We ask her if she's okay, and she doesn't know, so we call an ambulance and she goes to the hospital. Comes home and says the doctor thinks it's an allergic reaction, and instead of thanking us for helping her, instead says if we were decent neighbors, we'd have driven her to the hospital and saved her the cost of an ambulance. Tells us we're as worthless as everyone else on this street. So I decide I'm still not done. So I wait a few days and drive to visit my cousins again, and her car isn't around, so I walk around her house just inspecting. I see a small broken window pane in a basement window. She has an unfinished basement you can see through the dirty glass. So I went to the local pet store and bought 100 gray mice, making sure to get 50 males and 50 females, plus some rodent food. So I went back to her house and dumped all 100 through the broken window, along with sneaky dropping in the food. Do you realize how fast 100 breeding pair of mice will turn into 1,000, 10,000? So a month later, she has major exterminators over, and a week after that, she puts her house up for sale. All the neighbors badmouthed the house to all the potential buyers, and she ended up accepting an offer over $100K less than her asking price. Good riddance. Now nice people live there. Karma's a B. And our last story. The neighbor. It was 3 a.m. and my entire family was asleep after a long ride back to our hometown. While having one of the most pleasant dreams that involved having expensive cakes and fine wine, it was rudely disrupted by the sound of our family's car alarm, and my father went out to check out what happened. Apparently our neighbor was drunk and had fallen somehow. He hit our car hard enough for the alarm to activate. The entire issue could have been solved with a simple apology and everyone could have gone back to their own lives, but if that happened, I wouldn't be telling this story. Our neighbor was known to be a rather proud person and had loudly declared a few times that no one had ever won an argument against him in the past, so it was not surprising when he decided to push the blame onto my father when he realized everyone in my house was watching him. My father tried to talk things out and ask if he needed help, but the possibility of a peaceful discussion was going down pretty quickly when we saw that our neighbor's face was about as agitated as a fish out of water. None of us knew what was going on because as far as we knew, our car was parked in front of our house and there was nothing wrong with that. It also didn't help that our neighbor looked like a centipede that lost 98 legs and could barely stand properly without trying to use our car as support. The conversation went something like this. Father, are you okay? Do you need help? Neighbor looks around. Your car. I fell because of your car. Father, I'm sorry that happened. Neighbor, move your car or I'm calling the police. Father, go ahead. My car's in the right place. While we were waiting for the police to arrive, his outburst had woken up nearly everyone in the vicinity of our small neighborhood, and our neighbor was loudly exclaiming how he was right and how my dad didn't know the rules here because he doesn't live here. My father kept his poker face up all the way until the police came. My neighbor then granted himself a glamorous show of him being arrested in front of everyone with the charge of being a public nuisance for causing damage to someone's property with mischief as well as drunk driving later on after the police found out there was no way he walked home from the bar 30 kilometers away. Although his fall only caused a small dent in the car's boot with slight damage to the paint job, which would have been easily fixed, my father got $1,000 in payment for the damages. We had a great dinner the next day, which consisted of expensive cakes and fine wine. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.